the robin's back! So today I want to talk to you about a book of mine that is one of my favorites. It's called Invisible Cities, and it's by an Italian writer who's originally born in Cuba but then moved to Italy very shortly after he was born. Italo Calvino, I believe is how you say his name, but I'm sure there's a fantastic Italian way to say it. I'd love to have an Italian accent to be able to do that for you guys. But I'm sure someone will correct me, so you go right ahead and do that, Kay. This is all written in prose, I guess. They're like little short, I would almost call them poems myself, and I think there's some that are just so beautiful. Originally it was published in 1972, but I first found it by I took a fantasy class. It was like fantasy and film, TV, and literature. So I thought that'd be fantastic, and it was. I loved that course. I got to read, watch, hear so many great things. This book, which I'm showing you here instead of beside me, I love this book. This was one of the few books at university that I read from the beginning until the end because it was just so fantastic. And it's a book of imagination. It talks about these beautiful cities. I believe there's about 55 cities that it talks about, some short, some longer than others. And some of them are beautiful, some of them are sad, they're all over the place. It's kind of framed by this conversation between Marco Polo and Kublai Khan. And Marco Polo is sort of like the imagination side of things, whereas Khan is sort of like the power side of things. He's all about like stretching his empire out bigger, making him more powerful, making him richer and this and that, whereas Marco Polo is more about like imagination and how beautiful these cities are, how interesting they are. And there's little parts where it's conversations between them. They talk about things like language and human nature, and they talk about like a chess game, a whole bunch of different things. But I think the best parts are definitely the parts about the cities. They're just so gorgeous. I'll give you an example shortly. And the book is sort of broken up into 3 sections. The first section is kind of about the past, and then the middle section is chapters 2 to 8, I believe, and that's kind of like the present. And then chapter 9 is like the future. So they talk about many different themes. For instance, they talk about dreams or dystopia or utopia. They talk about the horizon a lot. They talk about roads, signs. They cover tons and tons of different things, but it's all very, very interesting to me. So now I'll read you an excerpt because it's so fantastic, and I think if you hear it, that you'd be more likely to want to read it if you're into this kind of thing. Obviously, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and I totally understand that, but if you do love reading and you love poetry or you love imagination or anything like that, I really think you'd like this book. So there's this one city that they say when people go to it, men of various nations have an identical dream. They saw a woman running at night through the unknown city. She was seen from behind with long hair and she was naked. They dreamed of pursuing her. As they twisted and turned, each of them lost her. After the dream, they set out in search of that city. They never found it, but they found another one. They decided to build a city like the one in the dream. It lay out the streets, each followed the course of his pursuit, at the spot where they had lost the fugitive's trail. They arranged spaces and walls differently from the dream, so she would be unable to escape again. And then it goes on to describe the city more. That one's cool, but my favorite one, like that one's like cities and desire. And they all have little things like thin cities, cities and eyes, cities and signs, cities and the dead. All different ones. And a lot of them are cities that like could never exist, like just the pure physics wouldn't work, but I think that's what makes them wonderful. Okay, here's a cool one. If you choose to believe me, good. Now I will tell how Octava, the spiderweb city, is made. There is a precipice between 2 steep mountains. The city is over the void, beyond the 2 crests with ropes and chains and catwalks. You walk on the little wooden ties, careful not to set your foot in the open space, or you cling to the hempen strands. Below, there is nothing for hundreds and hundreds of feet. A few clouds glide past. Further down, you can glimpse the chasm's bed. This is the foundation of the city, a net which serves as passages and support. All the rest, instead of rising up, is hung below. Rope ladders, hammocks, houses made like sacks, clothes hangers, terraces like gondolas, skins of water, gas jets, spits, baskets on strings, dumbwaiters, towers, trapezes, and rings for children's games, cable cars, chandeliers, pots with trailing plants. Suspended over the abyss, the life the city inhabits is less uncertain than in other cities. They know the net will last only so long. It's just so cool. Like, I know I screwed up a little and said it a bit, but like, oh, the picture that it makes in your mind is just fantastic. There's one, it's about like these nymph-like women, and oh, it's fantastic. When I read that, I was like, oh my god! I had to keep reading after that because it was so good. Armila is the city, and it's a thin city. So, whether Armila is like this because it is unfinished or because it has been demolished, whether the cause is some enchantment or only a whim, I do not know. The fact remains that it has no walls, no ceilings, no floors. It has nothing that makes it seem a city except the water pipes that rise vertically where the houses should be and spread horizontally where the floors should be. A forest of pipes that end in taps, showers, spouts, overflows. You would think the plumbers had finished their job and gone away before the bricklayers arrived, abandoned before or after it was inhabited. Armila cannot be called deserted. At any hour, rising your eyes among the pipes, you are likely to glimpse a young woman, or many young women, slender, not tall, of stature, luxuriating in the bathtubs or arching their backs under the showers suspended in the void, washing or dyeing or perfuming themselves or combing their long hair at a mirror. In the sun, the threads of water fanning from the showers glisten, the jets of the taps, the spurts, the splashes, the spongy suds. In the morning, you hear them singing. So this book is just beautiful. If you like poetry and things of that nature, if you like exciting books, or if you like reading, what's that? Obviously this isn't a book for you, but I think it's fantastic. It sits on the top of my bookshelf always, and when I feel like I need to read something beautiful, this is what I read. So that's that. On to the next. Oh, the robin's back. She's checking stuff out. She's like, is it safe to go back? I don't know. I don't know. She's thinking about it. She's like, who is this weird woman in a red dress? Why is she watching me? Oh, cute little head tilt. Alright, you guys probably don't. And almost went to the nest. Just checking things out. Oh my god! So you go right ahead and do that, Kay. I love this book.